everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and this is the Astral Library. So I have a bit of a recommendation video for you guys, and it's my favorite kind of recommendation video because it is a fan fiction recommendation video. And if you know me, you know I love some fan fiction. We have like a specific type of fan fiction we're talking about today, and that is of course hurt comfort fics, which are some of my favorite things. I don't know what's wrong with me, okay? But I love for my main characters to just be like going through it. I want them to be miserable, but then I want them to be hugged and held and put together and loved through all the misery, okay? I just love it so much. It gives me so much joy and comfort and just a big old hug. I need it and they need it and they need a nap. So I thought, why not recommend you guys some of my favorite hurt comfort fics? So I got a list of 10 fics for you guys that I've tried to divide between like the different couples I read. Most of them are romantic fics. There's one that has a little bit of romance, but it's mostly a gen fic or a fic that is focused more on friendship. But they're all some of my favorites. I love them to bits. Most of them are pretty lengthy, and I hope that you find one that you're willing to give a shot. I tried to get a spread of different fandoms and couples, but if I'm honest, I tend to stick in one fandom for a while. So a lot of these are going to be based on just like the fandom I'm like currently in. But with that said, let's go ahead and dive right in. I have my phone here with my handy dandy list. So let's go ahead and look at our very first recommendation for this video. So the very first fic I have for you guys is Shadow of Time by FightFireWithFire. So this is a Harry Potter fanfiction that specifically focuses on the relationship between Draco and Harry. This one in particular, we are dealing with Draco and Harry who are living their lives as adults. I believe they're Aura partners in this world, and one day they're investigating the scene at a house and someone had carved like a giant rune into the floor, and as they're investigating it they accidentally trip it and they get sent I believe like 20 years into the past. They find themselves back in their 14-year-old bodies with their whole memories intact and have to figure out, what are we going to do? How do we get back? What I really liked about this fic is that a lot of time when we have these moments where adults are traveling back to like teenage bodies, a lot of times like, yeah, we see them like having more mature thoughts, but we don't ever really get to see them mourn the life they had. And that is exactly what we get to see in this fic. We get to see Draco and Harry actually deal with the reality of they lost their entire lives. They lost the children they had, they lost their wives, and the idea that they could technically follow the same events and redo all those things and like marry their wives and have the children, but there's no guarantee that it will be the same. This fic was so good. This was so good. Like, this had me gripped to my tablet as I was reading in bed. I did not want to put it down. In fact, I remember spending a whole day where I just sat in bed reading that fic, which is something I tried to stop myself from doing, but I could not with this one because it just was so engaging, and I was like kicking my feet and also just like hurting because the grief that these boys really go through just like hits you hard in the feelings. It's such a beautifully written story. It is so engaging, and the emotional connection between Draco and Harry in this fic was just phenomenal. Okay, the second fic I have for you guys is Meet Me on the Fire Escape by MissLightBright. Now, I've talked about MissLightBright before. She is my favorite author in the Skate the Infinity fanfiction fandom, and oh my god. And this is a mixture between a romantic fic and a gen fic because we're following Reki, our main character, just after the death of his mother. And he is moving in with his grandfather, who he never really had a relationship with, nor did his mother really talk about. And we find out that is because that they had a very strained relationship. But when Reki's moving in, he also moves in across the street from Joe, who owns his own Italian restaurant across the way, and essentially finding himself interested in what is going on with Reki, who is very much in a very depressive episode because of the loss of his mother and his little sisters. So he just lost his entire family, and when he moves in with his grandfather, he is finding out exactly why his mother never talked to him anymore and why they never had a relationship to begin with. But also we are getting the romance with Longa, who just moves to Okinawa after he has lost his father in Canada. And so he and his mother are trying to restart in Okinawa, and of course he meets Reki at school and they I just fall in love. It is such a beautiful fic. MissLightBright just has such a way of like capturing these characters, but also she's like the master of her comfort. She puts her characters through it. Like, I'm talking about, you will watch Reki go through the worst, the most. He is always being hurt, either physically or just like emotionally being wrecked. And in this case, it's kind of both. The third fic I have for you guys is another Draco Harry fanfiction. It's my main fandom at the moment. We're not talking about it, but it is Graceless Heart by Shushu Yaoi LJ. So of all the fics on here, this is probably one of the more spicier and like spice heavy fics. Most of the ones I've listed have some sort of spice element to it, but it's not like a major focus. This one definitely starts with a very sexual relationship between Draco and Harry, because in this story we are following past the events of canon, and this is the summer before what is going to be their 8th year at Hogwarts. And Harry is feeling a little lost of what to do in his life. He has no direction, he doesn't really have any dreams, he doesn't want to live the life he's kind of been destined for. He doesn't want to be an Auror, he doesn't want to be a hero anymore, he doesn't know what he wants. And so during the summer, he is asked to come help the Aurors as they're investigating Malfoy Manor, trying to find any like dark magic artifacts and like other things that can be dangerous. And Harry, seeing nothing else to do, decides to go. And while he's there, he runs into who, of course, but Draco Malfoy, who is different because he's a lot quieter and he is still retaining some of the snarkiness that Harry is used to, but Harry also notices that he's a lot skinnier, that he looks a lot drearier, and he starts to realize that he and his mother are not being treated well during their house arrest. And Harry finds himself inevitably drawn to Draco more and more, especially as he and Draco are assigned to go through the Malfoy library to kind of sort out what books are dangerous and which are not. And during their time together, Harry is finding out that Draco is in the process of losing everything. He's going to be losing his home and he's going to be losing all his possessions. As they're like learning more about each other and Draco's becoming a little bit more vulnerable, they fall into a very sexual relationship that at first, neither boy knows what to do with. The story is following them not only during the summer, but also as they go back to Hogwarts and trying to figure out what to do with their relationship now that they are surrounded by more people. This one is a relatively faster romance where we definitely start with a more physical and sexual relationship, and the emotions come later. And I feel like this author does a really good balance between that. Even though we do have like the faster romance with the smut and the spice, but we see that emotional level, I think, equally as developed. Well, I really like the conversation this author does with promoting this like idea of like what happens after the hero's completed his journey and this like sense of purposelessness. And how do we look at someone who is the golden child for the good side, and how do we look at the dark prodigy of the evil side, and what do we do when they're both kind of the same and they're both suffering from the effects of this war, and how do we kind of reconcile that? It is so good. Okay, the next fic I have is another Draco Harry fanfic. Again, it's my main fandom at the moment. These are the ones that are like been drawing me in. So this one is called Childish Things by Leonard. I've talked about this fic before and how much I've loved it. So I will try to be a bit brief here. If you want to see more about it, you can check out the original video I have posted here and my 10 fanfictions that are better than traditional books. But this one, oh my god. So this is the very first Harry Potter fanfiction I ever read. And mind you, I have not read Harry Potter, so I had no connection to these characters really, nor to the books, and I've only ever seen the first 6 movies. So like, I could not tell you why I decided to read this fanfiction, but I did. And it was so beautiful, and it's what sparked and sent me into a spiral for Draco Harry fanfiction. It truly is. It is the reason for my obsession with these two. This fic was so powerful that it got me into the fandom I had no attachment to. Like, that is a feat. Because I need some sort of emotional connection to characters, and this whole fic built my entire emotional connection to Draco and Harry. That's all I have to say about it, okay? It will forever hold a place in my heart. I've read it so many times, and I cannot recommend it enough, especially as a hair comfort fic. Okay, we are finally out of the Draco Harry fanfictions. We're gonna go on a spree of some other fandoms. And the first I have is How to Love a Living Thing by Polomonkey. So this is a Merlin Arthur fanfiction from the BBC show Merlin. This fic in particular takes place after the events of season 1 of Merlin, and Merlin is feeling a little guilty after he has defeated Nimue and his confrontation with her ended with her death. And he starts to pull away from Arthur, feeling that he is not worthy of Arthur, that he is in some way tainted by the actions he did. And as he is pulling away, 2 knights in Camelot decide to make Merlin their target, and they begin relentlessly tormenting him. So it goes beyond just bullying. They are demeaning him. I believe at one point there is a direct assault and like threats of sexual assault, but nothing happens on screen. But like Merlin's going through it, and Arthur has no idea until he does. And so we're watching this relationship as Arthur's not understanding why is Merlin pulling away, especially since it's just seemed that they were starting to get closer. And at the same time, learning that Merlin is being threatened and harassed by 2 of his own knights. This is like the most picture perfect definition of hurt comfort, because we are getting the hurt Merlin and the comfort of Arthur. It's so good. It's so good. I love everything Merlin and Arthur, okay? I need the fics after the show broke my heart. Again, if you know, you know. And this is a fic that I think is just like perfectly settled into the world of Merlin, while also developing the relationship in that romantic sense that I was craving throughout the show. Okay, the next fic I have. This is the one I think I've stretched the prompt a little bit, because it's not technically a hurt comfort fic. It is not tagged as such. But like in my soul, I believe this to be a hurt comfort fic. And that is the Venetian Fly Trap by Just Another Day. So this fanfic is based in the Captive Prince series, which is a series I've talked a lot about on the channel and how much I love. It's by C.S. Pacat. Go read it. But it is a reimagining this series. Word of warning, this is a Alpha Omega fanfiction. So we are dealing things with like heats and mates. I would say this is definitely not the typical Omegaverse kind of tropes you would see in a fic. I think this one is very well done in dealing with like, what do we do with these dynamics that have these power imbalances, while also creating that tension between the characters as they're being drawn to each other. So in the story, we're following Laurent, who is the Prince of Ver, and he presents as an Omega, which is something he is wary of because Omegas are not viewed very well in Ver. In fact, they're seen as weaker, and Laurent, being the heir, is in a very precarious position, especially because his uncle is vying for the throne and is constantly trying to undermine Laurent. And in doing so, he sends Laurent to the battlefields where they are fighting against the Aclean Kingdom and their heir, Damon. Due to his uncle's scheming, Laurent soon finds himself in the middle of his enemy's camp just before he is about to go into heat, or this period that his body kind of loses control of himself. And Laurent, who is deathly afraid that he's going to be raped and brutalized by his enemies, finds himself in front of who other than the Prince of the Alkean army, Damien. They create a alliance of sorts where Laurent will use Damien to overthrow his uncle and to recapture the kingdom of Ver for himself, while also promising to help Damon fight against his brother, who is also scheming for his throne. So they create this shaky alliance between each other. And that's all I could really tell you. This is a very extensive fic that goes through the entire series, plus the kind of after stories of the original series. This is such a seamless ABO fic, like one of the most seamless I've ever read, because it doesn't feel like much has changed other than this added tension between Damon, who is in fact an alpha, and Laurent, who is an omega, and they find that kind of biological draw towards each other. But everything between them is entirely consensual and so hard-hitting and just like gut-wrenching. When they get together, it's just like the explosion of emotion and relief. Like, you're rooting for them the whole time. I think it's such a great reimagination of the world and a way to make the plot that I'm already familiar with and have read multiple times seem new and exciting and fun. The next fic I have for you is Burn Your Wings by oWhiteKiwiBird. So this is a My Hero Academia fanfiction that specifically follows the relationship between Todoroki and Midoriya. So in this fic, we're following Midoriya as he is not, in fact, quirkless in this world, but he is born with two quirks, a fire quirk from his father and his mother's kind of telekinesis quirk. However, we do find out that Midoriya's father is extremely abusive, and because of that abuse, Midoriya is so afraid and unwilling to use his fire quirk. He's spending all his time training his quirk and trying to understand it while also avoiding that part of himself because of his father's abuse. Everything in canon still happens, so we definitely still see him get all for one. We see him get into UA and make all the friends in class 1A, the hero course. All that still happens, but we do get this added element of Midoriya's own powers and how he is trying to overcome his trauma surrounding his quirk, and of course, how he starts getting closer to Todoroki. So not only do we get this conversation of where's the line between self-sacrificing and being a hero, but also this idea of, but how do you learn to love yourself and to love others? It is a great fic. It is a really fun fic. I promise this is the last one, but I have one more, just one more Draco Harry fanfiction. I promise it's the last one, okay? I promise, no more. But that is Lover, Where Do You Live by dodgerkedavra. This is a recent read. In fact, within I would say the past week or so. I don't know how to explain this fic without giving too much away, so I'm just gonna read you the description. I think this perfectly encapsulates what this fic is about. So, Harry Potter has been running away since the war, disappearing into his job as a freelance cursebreaker. Work is his life. Home doesn't exist. He's about to disappear again when he runs into Death Eater turned healer Draco Malfoy. It's supposed to be a one-night stand. They're not supposed to pine for each other. Harry's not supposed to sleep with Draco a second time, or a third, or a fourth. But when a nasty curse sends Harry back into Draco's arms, he might be forced to admit that home's been waiting for him all along. Or Harry wants to go home, Draco wants to be a home. It's hard to say it out loud. That last line in particular, I think just perfectly sums up this fic. That we have these two characters who are adrift in the world in different ways, and watching them slowly come together and learn how to be vulnerable with each other. Okay, we have two more fics, and this next fic is what I would say is probably the most gen fic I have on this list, and that is Crust and Sugar by ShanaStoryteller. So this is a fanfic in the Yuri on Ice fandom. So particularly we're looking at the relationship between Katsuki Yuri and Yuri Platetsky. This is close I'm gonna get. Platetsky. It's good enough. This is a canon divergence where when Yuri is crying to himself in the bathroom over his anxiety and the death of his dog, little Russian Yuri decides to kick the door in and ridicule him, but also try to comfort him. And they start an unlikely friendship between the two and maintain this relationship even though they are across the world from each other, with Yuri back in America and Yurio back in Russia. And it's such a sweet fic between the two of them because we really get to see this developing relationship and get to see that while Yurio is presenting himself as this really tough and confident person, we often see him also break down because he is still so young in this sport and he is lost in this world with only his grandfather who is getting older, and Yurio is finding himself being worried more and more about him and having to lean on Yuri to kind of figure out how to survive in this world and how to kind of get that emotional comfort he needs when he doesn't always feel open to do so. Something that's really special, I think, in fics, I think oftentimes we get lost in the romance as typically what we think of as the default and the normal. So every now and again getting to see a fic that, while yes, we have some inclusion of the romance, it is really focusing on the relationship between two completely platonic characters and to see how important those relationships are and how much they can impact you as a person. A great place to start if you are just getting into Yuri on Ice fanfiction, I believe, too, because you're not getting too lost in the sauce of the romance, but rather the friendships between characters, which we do see reflected in the canon anime, as well as this fits really seamlessly into the canon events of the show. So it doesn't feel like too many things are different, that nothing is really changed too heavily that you would get lost in it. And I have the very last fic of this one. This is another fic that is not tagged Hurt Comfort, but I think it's just missing that tag because this definitely falls into the lines. And that is Divided We Stand by KouriArashi. So this fic is based in the Teen Wolf fandom, which, oh my god, had a grip on teenage Emily, let me tell you. And particularly we are following the relationship between Styles and Derek. So this is another fic that I've talked about in that original 10 fanfiction video. So I'm not gonna go too far in depth here, but let me just tell you why you should go read it, okay? First and foremost, this is definitely a AU fic. We're not dealing with the kind of canon events of the TV show. So if you've seen the show and you're like, I don't want to read anything about it, this is the fic for you. In this particular story, most of Derek's family survived the attack and they are trying to rebuild their family. And part of that is their mother trying to get her children to find their mate so they can expand their family and be happier. One way to do that is by going to these searching ceremonies, which are these events that happen all throughout town that essentially is ceremony or like event where people in town kind of gather and werewolves will come and essentially interact and meet new people to try to see if anyone will be their fated mate and feel that instant connection between them. Derek does not want to do this at all. He is being forced to this event by his mother. And while he is there, he is miserably just kind of like glancing through everyone so he can say that he was there and that he did the thing and his mom can't mad at him. Well, as he's kind of looking through the crowd and he's gonna be forced to pick someone, in walks Styles, who was not a part of this event, but is in fact looking for his best friend, and Derek looks to him, feels that instant connection and says, him. Pandemonium ensues because not only was Styles not a part of this event, but we learn that how humans view this searching ceremony is very different than how the wolves see it. Because the wolves, again, treat this as kind of like a meet and greet, a chance to talk to new people and to possibly find that connection. Through Styles, we learn that humans see this as like a ticket to having a great life because werewolf families are known to have a lot of money and to have a lot of influence over town, and Derek's family is no exception. And so when Styles is picked, a lot of people turn against him, thinking that he stole the opportunity from everyone else, which is really not true because like, it is a connection that cannot be faked. Ooh, we're losing some sun. I guess some clouds rolled in. And so we're dealing not only with Derek having to face his mom, who is not necessarily happy with Derek's choice and thinks that he has chosen Styles as a prank to her, but also Styles, who is feeling like he is not good enough and he's like encountering a lot of this self-doubt and not believing that Derek really does truly senses this connection between them and that they could see each other being really happy with each other. This fic is really great because not only just like the hurt comfort just like skyrocket, like every moment you see Styles like going through it emotionally and at times physically, but also this story has like a really good interesting like mystery plot because Styles becomes more and more invested in like what happened to Derek's family and who possibly started this fire. So it's a double whammy, okay? You got the romance element, you get to see them develop and like this relationship really start to kind of like take off, while also you get the mystery thrill element, like what is going on, who is possibly targeting Derek's family, and are they in further danger? This is a fic I constantly go back to. Like if I'm gonna reread any Teen Wolf fanfiction fic, it is this series. So there's more than one. You can read the first one and end and be perfectly fine, but I highly recommend reading the entire series. It's great. All the characters are well developed and just like you can see that the author took a lot of care not only to seeing how they were developed in the original show and like why we loved them so much, but kind of taking that development and turning it on its head and really pushing them to grow more and more. All right, but that is all 10 fics I have for you guys. I hope you found some great recommendations, that you give some of them a chance, especially some of the shorter ones. Again, just dip your toes in. I promise once you turn to fanfiction, you'll never turn back. It's so good. Come to the dark side. Come join us over here where we get to relive our love for our favorite TV shows and books. Honestly, fanfiction's the best cure for a book hangover. Like, you ever read a book so good you just didn't want to let it go? Fan fiction. It's the best thing, okay? I promise you, you will never regret it. You might regret it when you're like up at 3 a.m., but like, that's worth it. That's worth it in my books. But that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please consider leaving a thumbs up and a comment down below. Let me know, what are your favorite fan fictions that you've read? Or what fan fictions of these are you thinking of maybe trying? I want to talk more about fan fiction. Let me know what fics you're into. Give me a list of recommendations. I will promise I will check them out. I'm always looking for more to read. That's it for me. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!